Hey, what's up YouTube? I've been wanting to do this video for a while because I can't find a good video anywhere about how to do gel coat repair in your backyard if you're a do-it-yourselfer. If you looked around the web and you've looked at some of the videos and you're half as confused as I am, well then I'm twice as confused as you are. So I hope. First things first, the components we need for a gel coat repair are going to be, of course, the gel coat. And gel coat is a thickened resin. It's almost like a gelatinous material. It's much thicker and it's got different properties than resin, but it's still a polyester resin. We're going to need a mixing vessel, graduated, preferably in milliliters. Small cups are really helpful as well because you're going to do some small components. You're going to need chemicals after the gel coat. You're going to need acetone to clean it up. You're going to need at least a methyl ethyl ketone, which is a thinner. Another thinner you can use is styrene monomer, but that's a little more expensive. Do not use the acetone to thin because it'll break down the components inside the gel coat. I'm going to do some colored stuff, so I'm going to have my pigments, and pigments come in different sizes of tubes or little jars. The colors you want, so I'll explain how to mix that, and the hardener. This is methyl ethyl ketone with a P, M-E-K-P, and so it's a little different than this, and it's used to catalyze the whole thing. Spray guns. You're going to use a compressor on this one. You can do the paintbrush, roller, and there's other videos on how to do that, but spraying it's going to give you much better results and a lot easier to get to where you want to be. So two types of sprayers. We're all familiar with this one, the Automotive Sprayer. The problem is the orifice is way too small. That's about a 1.2, and that's not going to handle the thick materials in a gel coat. So what you want to do is a gel coat sprayer, and this is about a 2.3 millimeter orifice there. Much larger orifice, and that's important because you're pushing thicker material through the port. So your standard spray for paint is not going to work. You want disposable gloves to deal with. You're going to have to break this down quickly once you've finished because the gel coat's going to be setting up because it's been catalyzed with MEKP. So you're going to want tools to break down your gun, small brushes to clean out that orifice, and a good supply of acetone at your cleaning station, rubber gloves. You want to do that quickly or you're going to be using that only one time. Of course, you want to use a respirator. This is really nasty stuff. Can't emphasize that enough. Personal protection glasses, and I like a Tyvek suit. Even though I wear pretty grubby clothes, that stuff goes everywhere and it sticks. For surface prep, you can use the old-fashioned method, sandpaper away if you got hours of your life to do that. I go down to Harbor Freight, buy one of these $30, $40 sanders and some pads, and strip a big area at once. So here's the damaged goods. I do a lot of beating up on my kayak and it's not pretty anymore. It's also my canvas. I like to paint on it, change the color pattern a lot. I'm gonna paint right over the top of all of this. I've got some damaged areas like here. I've got some other large scrapes. I've got some filled holes here. And I'll show you what I'm gonna do to those. So first thing I'm gonna do before I repair them, or I start to prep them for repair, is I'm not going to just chip away at the edges like some people have suggested to do and try to work some gel coat in there. I'm going to take out a large area because you want to feather that gel coat way out there. You want to give it a long way to travel, or it's going to get lumpy, or it's going to get caught around those corners and it's just going to pop back out again. So I kind of mark off the areas. See, in this repair here, I'm going to grind it out to this area, feathering it all the way out that much, because that's going to really help it with the smoothness and stuff. But I'm going to give it overall a sand over the whole thing, just a light sand with my machine to take off some of the surface waxes and dirt and debris. Then after that, I'm going to give it a wash down with some acetone. Then my surface will be ready for spray. All right, 20 minutes later, and my God, I've wrecked the boat, right? Now, this is what it actually takes to be able to get a new coat of gel coat to adhere to the old coat of gel coat. You got to strip it down a bit. And your pads should look like this. You should replace them. I'll dust that off and wash it. But for instance, here's that patch I was talking about. I want to feather it out to a nice big area like that. Some of the scratches, I've gone in pretty deep around those areas as well. So I'll wash this off, tape off the areas I don't want to get sprayed, and I'll prep it up for this. All right, I've sprayed it all off with high compressed air, high pressure, about 100 pounds. Got to get all the stuff out, then I've washed it down with acetone rag, and this rag was white when I started. So you see how much extra it picked up even after I sprayed it off with compressed air. I've prepped the surface. The whole sand down and prep stage took me about an hour. Way out. If you want that nice shiny look that you get with a brand new kayak or a brand new boat of some type, you're gonna have to take it to a boat yard. You're gonna have to pay them upwards of $100, $150 an hour sometimes to get that quality, because you need a nice room with controlled humidity, controlled temperature, controlled dust, and you want to pay someone to spray the stuff on and to sand it down smooth to a polish and shine it. That's not what I'm going to do here. What I'm going to do is spray it on thick, and I'm going to leave it rough. And what that means is I'm not going to do the finish sanding. What happens with paint when you spray it, not gel coat, paint now, paint will basically spray on and spread out nice and thin to a nice even layer. Gel coat is a thick. Think of it as like throwing spitballs against the wall. Little clumps. Little clumps are kind of going to mesh together and bond, but they're not completely going to smooth out. It's not going to give you a nice even layer like paint would. It's going to give you a little bit rougher texture on the outside. That smooth layer you see with gel coat is gel coat that comes out of a mold, where you have a internal mold, you spray it with gel coat, you fiberglass it a few layers, and then you pull it off of a wax surface, and it gives you that nice shiny, beautiful off the showroom quality. If you want to approach that again doing this type of technique, you're going to have to sand, and then polish down with 600 grit sandpaper and polishing compound on a buffer wheel. It takes hours and hours. And is it worth it? It's not worth it for me in this kayak, so I'm going to leave it a bit rough. It's still going to look nice, still going to do all the stuff the gel coat is supposed to do. So I'm at my mixing stage now, and I know my gun, I know my capacity. I like to shoot around 250 milliliters at a time. So I'm shooting about that much, about half of one of these containers, and I'm going to mix the gel coat. I'm going to pigment it to the color I want. I'm going to thin it with methyl ethyl ketone at about 10%. The amount of pigment you add is very little. It depends on how transparent you want the color, and that's really a matter of preference. So you got to experiment a little bit until you know how your pigments are going to react. You want to thin no more than 10%, preferably around 8%. You want that material to be thick when it goes on. If it's too thin, too watery, it's going to leave pockets. You're going to have to go back and do multiple coats. If it's too thick, it won't come out of the gun. So you're going to have to find that happy number, and it's somewhere between 5 and 10% of thinning. Unless you're in a really hot environment, 90 degrees plus, you might not have to thin at all. Wearing gloves all the time, of course. Dust masks are okay for rough, dry sanding, but when you get to the chemicals, you definitely need a respirator. This is really nasty stuff. It stands for acetone. I'm going to use that for cleanup, but I'm also going to put just a few drops through, and I'm going to spray it through my gun right now. What that's going to do is it's going to clean the mechanism inside my gun before I start. So once I get that component out, let it dry, I can mix my other components, pour it in. I'm only going to have 20 minutes of work time, so I got to get an idea of what this looks like. Do it real quick so I don't breathe too much of it. But this is what raw gel coat looks like before I stir it up. It's kind of chunky like this. I'm going to mix it up, take my stuff, I'm going to thin it, pigment it, and catalyze it before I put it in the gun. Catalyze it at the very last stage, because that's when the time starts. If you catalyze at about 1.5% for any temperatures up above 75 degrees, should be lasting about 20 minutes before it starts to set. In that 20 minutes, you want to spray the hull, you want to get your gun apart, and you want to start cleaning it. If the set's up in the gun, you can throw your gun away, right? You don't want to do that. Okay, I've blended my colors. I chose to go a little darker than the stock green here. This is a forest green or something. I pigmented it with a little bit of the blue, just about, so it's about 85% green and about 15% blue. Again, all I need is a drop. Basically what I took is a stick, I dipped it into the color, and I put it into here. It doesn't take much pigment to get to this stage. And the final stage is, of course, the MEKP to catalyze it. I'm catalyzing at about 1.75%, so that's the correct volume. You want to measure that out, make sure it all fires off correctly. I'm going to mix that into there, stir it up, load it into my gun, get busy spraying. All right, first coat down, and you can tell it's pretty thin. A lot of the under stuff is still showing through. That's kind of the look I want. I want it a little bit thicker than this, so I'm going to go over it another time, at least one more coat, till I get the transparency and the texture that I really want on this feature. So I made this stuff kind of thin and went over it real light. The first coat, more like a tack coat. It helps with the bonding of the next coats. You don't want to go thick right off the bat. That thick layer will probably just peel off eventually. And of course, right after I'm done, I go right over to my cleaning station. I clean my gun with acetone. I leave a little bit of acetone left in it to spray out for the next time. Don't want anything to set up in the gun. You gotta take the whole head off, clean all the ports, do the full clean every single time. Okay, this is coat number 2. I'm gonna go for one more coat. I kind of wanted some of that camo to kind of come through, give it a kind of a model look. So I'm not using as much pigment in the mix that I'd usually use if I was going to paint this dark green, for instance, a solid color. But I want the kind of mottled stuff to come through, and I think it is showing up a little bit. I like it that way. So I'm thinking one more coat. Also kind of make it kind of transparent. And as you can see, most of the scratches have been hidden and the sunshine is coming out. And that's by design. I actually wanted to time it this way. So I wanted to spray while it's in the shade, and I want the afternoon sun to hit this and bake that stuff on. Really cure that gel coat off. It should. So be really careful about the sunlight. Be really careful about the temperature. You don't want to spray at any temperatures lower than about 65 degrees. And, you know, preferably up to 80 degrees or higher would be good. Keeps it thin. But note that the higher temperatures, the less catalyst you're going to add to your mixture, and you can figure that out pretty quick with some testing. But one more coat should do it. Alright, so here's the final product, and this is as far as I'm going to take it. I could go 6 coats on here and get a nice thick green, but I actually wanted it a little mottled. I want some of my previous camo to show through here. Covered up most of the scratches, and it's the function I wanted on it. So, depends on how deep you want to go. Again, things I want to review are respirator for this, not a dust mask. This is very volatile chemicals and they will screw your liver up over time. Maybe not the first time you do it, but probably the second or third. So get your cleaning station set up in advance, because as soon as you're done you want to clean your gun out. You don't want your gel coat to harden in your gun. You're going to throw guns away, and guns get very expensive, especially when you're looking at a gel coat gun. Here again, and like I said before, the sun's coming out. That's what I want now. I want the sun to bake. If you look, so that's it. Personal protection is key. You can make mistakes. You always learn from your mistakes. If you want an absolutely perfect back to the showroom type of finish, take it to a boat yard. Have them do it. Doing a hull like this in a boat yard should cost you no less than $1,000 to fix the little scratches and stuff, or they're probably not going to do it right. But I don't. What I do is I repaint this thing like this about once a year. This boat is 26 years old this year, and I repair it. I recoat it with gel coat, and I change the color pattern. I change the schemes whenever I want to, and I'm a do-it-yourself guy. I really enjoy doing this kind of stuff. So good luck with your project. Let me know how it works out. Thanks for watching.